Greetings, 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 greetings. This meeting has come to order. It is August the 8th, 2021. As we know in the Berber calendar, it's 2971. The time is now 2:17 p.m. We start this meeting in regard to our authority, which arises from the legislative statute called the New Jersey Revised Statute under Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 28, which means rights states under the Charter of Great Britain, saved from repeal. What charter are we talking about? The Great or Royal Charter from the Magna Carta, which is sent down from the House of Plenitude under King Godfrey the Fifth, Count of Banchu. All his sons, who ruled by agnatic succession, we are carrying out that leniency in the lineal descent. We're going to start in regards to understanding that a lot of our history has not been told, but we're going to show you today. I'll let Archbishop make his inquiry, as well as the other brothers, and we can get started with this marvelous lesson.
Greetings, people. It is I, Archbishop Belmont, from the Noble House of Belmont, and I, as well as the brothers here for the Clifford's Inn, we are here on our first meeting on August 8th, 2021, which is also the day of the new moon falling to Aquarius. So this is all going to be a great time for us to see new things brought into fruition. And I'm going to keep this simple and quick, but the law is the order of all things, and all men on this planet, as well as woman, is subject to the law. As you know your language, you know your family's ancestry goes back to the English, then you know today that this is where all your authority as the people to keep your ancestors as well as your rights and protections that you're supposed to have in this day and age secured. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and leave the rest to the introduction to the rest of the brothers, so that way they can go ahead and give their introduction.
Well said. Thank you, Archbishop. Peace and love, angels. Peace and love, nobles. Peace and love, royals and nobilities at the sound of my voice. It's the first day of Clifford's Inn. So as we announce this, I want to congratulate everyone as taking your first step to honoring and knowing your foremothers and forefathers' heritage and their parliament, as it were, the upper house. I give thanks and give our high honors to all of our ancestors, to all of the paths that they've laid before us. And I leave the rest to the brothers to leave their introduction. Peace and love from the House of Mercy. Peace and love from the House of Murphy to all of you.
Peace and love, angels, Englishmen and Englishwomen. I'm your brother, Brother Simpson from the Royal House of Simpson. We are gathered here today on the first day of Clifford's Inn. And as to start it off, don't forget, like we always say, make sure you have everything you need with you, your water, pens, and papers, because that's all we need. The swords, the Bibles, and just to remember. We're remembering our ancestors and the ones who came before us, who broke down and laid this foundation for us. So we'll continue on the path of righteousness and the path of life. Peace and love at the sound of my voice.
Blessings all nobles. Excuse me. Blessings all Anglos of all statuses. This is the first meeting of Clifford's Inn, the House of Urgency. Just greeting y'all. Get ready for another wonderful lesson.
Well said, well said. Brothers have spoken from their respective houses. Archbishop from the House of Belmont, Bishop Murphy from the House of Murphy, Brother Simpson from the House of Simpson, and Brother Burgess from the House of Burgess. All this arises from the authority, as I said, New Jersey Revised Statute, Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 28. Our authority and ability to be able to function as a temple of the English Church is governed under Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 4. Being able to appoint missionaries, ministers, officers, etc. Title 16, Chapter 1 according to Title 16, colon 16-6-2, is the reason why we're functioning here today as a result of our body of politics have become extinct. So now as officers, we have the ability to resurrect that body of politics that would have become extinct pursuant to Title 16, colon 6-2. And in regards to Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 30, even in regards of any civil incorporation, our authority as the English Third Temple Church, reformed from the English Church of England, which has become extinct by way of the Treaty of Union of 1707, or have the right to be recognized in any court of law, regardless of any civil incorporation, because our rights goes back to what we call time immemorial. So welcome, 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 welcome to Clifford Zen, one of the greatest temples that ever existed throughout time immemorial. And we just want to give you a brief history of what Clifford Zen before we get into the history of our fundamental government that has gone or become extinct, which we're now resurrecting in this day and time on this date, 8/8/2971, which you know as under Gregorian year 2021. All right. So without further ado, let's get started. I don't know where my tabs went to. Give me 1 second. Let me just find it. Not it. Okay, here we go. I hope you are ready for a beautiful lesson. You know, this lesson has never been presented to you before, but we're going to try to do our best to give it to you in a manner that's suitable and fitting for all of us to unfold as a family. As you can see, we are from our distinctive houses make up the kingdom or the empire, I should say, as the kingdom of Albion, which is descended down from what you call your biblical book that is being told to you from an abstract perspective. But we here at the King's Bench in Clifford Zen are here to give you the concrete understanding so that you will know what it is and what it is that you are called to do. This lesson is for our men so that we can gain our position as kings, so we can raise our queens and put them back and raise them from the status of Part 2 Secretary Trim. You know, our authority as father has been stolen from us, but our job now today is to fix that problem. So as with all lessons, I'm gonna need the participation of the Clifford, the King's Bench to help assist in the reading so that everybody can get a breather because we have a lot of content to cover. All right, so Archbishop, you can start here. Once again, we're gonna hit and move for the sake of time. If you watched our previous videos, you can go back, but today marks the very first start of the body of politics now resurrected at the reformation of our religious freedoms through by way of acts of legislation revised at what we call statutes, which were implemented in this day and time pursuant to, as we said, Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 28. But we're gonna have to go back to give you a foundation of our authority as it pertains to this present day, protected under Title 16 in its chapters and sections. All right, you can start, Brother Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont. Well, actually, I'd like you to say a couple of words to that as well as Bishop Belmont.
Okay. And point of interest, brothers and sisters, thank you for coming and joining us on our first day of Clifford Zen. And, you know, days like this, many people don't have opportunity to be a part of the commencement. But for those who have the opportunity to be here, you're in for a grand treat. So once again, thank you. And let us go ahead and get on started with this. Clifford's Inn is a former inn of
Bishop Belmont. I want Bishop Murphy to say a couple of words, too.
Oh, sorry about that.
Thank you, King.
You're welcome, brother.
Greetings, everyone. Point of interest. This is, we all know that law and history go hand in hand together. And we know that your law and your history have been separated. So here at Clifford's Inn, we've come to reattach your mind and your head to your body. So I want you to pay close attention to all the law that precedes you, because this is the jurisprudence in civics and nationality that which most of you are looking to ascertain and to know well, your birthright. All right, I yield the floor.
Okay. And I'd just like to give honor to Brother Burgess from their particular house, of his brother Simpson, for their studiousship and their humbleness to be able to take on the status as becoming an apprentice, so that they will one day make it to the status of bishops as being part of the King's Bench, as they protect Clifford's Inn, which is here for the English Spirit Temple Church of England, in regards to honor what our legacy that was laid down by our ancestors that goes back to time immemorial. So thank you, brothers, for your stewardship. All right. Go ahead, Brother Archbishop Belmont.
Okay. All right. Clifford's Inn is a former inn of chancery in London. It was located between Fetter Lane, Clifford's Inn Passage, leading off Fleet Street and Chancery Lane in the city of London. The inn was founded in 1344 and refounded June 15, 1668. It was dissolved in 1903, and most of its original structure was demolished in 1934. It was both the first inn of chancery to be founded and the last to be demolished. Through the ages, Clifford's Inn was engaged in educating students in jurisprudence, Edward Coke and John Selden being two of its best-known alumni. It also accommodated graduates preparing for ordination, such as the novelist Samuel Butler, and those studying for other professions. In 1903, the members of Clifford's Inn reached the view that the establishment had outlived its purpose in education and unanimously voted to dissolve its incorporation. Its remaining funds were donated to the Attorney General for England and Wales. Since then,
That's cool, Archbishop.
Okay.
All right. Now, what we need to understand, first of all, my first name is Clifford. All right. So it's beautiful to be able to just link the actual name to your profession. As we see that all the functions that were dissolved in 1934, as a result, of 1903, as a result of the jurisprudence being transferred by way of incorporation into what we now call the Attorney General. The Attorney General, we know in this present body of politics, is the head of the state's government as well as head of the federal government, which defends the state, i.e. their body of politics. Now, once again, we knowing that there's a separation of church and state, we have to make sure that as citizens, inhabitants, and residency, as well as officers, protecting our body of politics, which we know at one time wasn't separated. It was called a fusion of power. And it goes back to the jurisdictional powers and authority of the body of politics of our ancestors who descended down from England. All right. So we're going to go back and read the government structure of what Clifford Inn was established in lieu of what we call the inner temple, the middle temple, and the outer temple. These particular temples is what your barristers, attorneys, and lawyers go to school to learn to be able to represent what they so-called say the people. But they have transitioned from that to representing corporations, i.e. the people. Because people are now corporations, and we done went through that, so we're not going to go through it anymore. You can see the previous lessons that we did. A quick history of the Clifford's Inn. Go ahead and be Archbishop.
History. The ends of chancery appear to have evolved in tandem with the ends of court. During the 12th and 13th centuries, the law was taught in the city of London, primarily by the clergy. However, during the 13th century, two events happened which diminished this form of legal education. Firstly, a decree by Henry III of England stating that no institutes of legal education could exist in the city of London. And secondly, a papal bull prohibiting clergy from teaching law in London. Consequently, the system of legal education dispersed, with lawyers instead settling on the outskirts of the city of London, but as close as possible to Westminster Hall, where the signing of the Magna Carta led to the establishment of a permanent court. The neighborhood.
Cool. That's cool. So as you can see, all goes back to our authority under Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 28, right stated under charters. You have to be specific. What charter are you talking about? Because there were charters granted, and some of those charters that were granted were done unconsciously as well as illegally done. All right, and we're going to show you how that was done so from your so-called founding fathers. Okay, this is going to be one of the best lessons you ever heard in your life. All right, so as you can see, Westminster Hall, where Westminster Abbey also has very influential part to play in this, because we know that most of your so-called, as it said here, during the 12th and 13th century, the law was taught in the city of London primarily by your clergy. Okay, your clergy, not the modern day attorneys, lawyers, barristers. All these are actually power of attorneys. And to be a power of attorney, you have to grant them permission. And that's what we have, that's what the people have done. They have given over their position as being owners of their own estate. When I say estate, I'm talking about the physical body. All right. And it says, however, during the 13th century, this is talking about the 12th, this gets to the time era of the plantation crown, where our forefathers kept our estates intact, had two events which diminished this form of legal education. Firstly, a decree by Henry III of England stating that no institute of legal education could exist in the city of London. Because at this particular time, you're going through usurpation of the legal as well as history, because we know history and law is one and the same, of our ancestral estate that was protected by this particular house. Because we know Henry III was a son of John. Pardon, Henry II. Oh, I had it right. Okay, my bad. I had it right. You know what I'm saying? So we see here, this is Henry III, son of John. You see, burial, Westminster Abbey. Consort, Eleanor Providence. What house? The House of Plantagenet. Father, John, King of England. John is the one who signed the Magna Carta. So as we've seen with the origin of Clifford Inn, is rooted in the Magna Carta, the Royal Charter. That deals with estates, real property or personal property. In this case, we're talking about the land. And land is governed by the law, i.e. The Bill of Rights that the United States borrowed to create what they so-called Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 clauses of the First Amendment. Okay, so as you see, his father was John. So the root of the origin of our solution lies with John, King of England. All right, now let's get into the government of our ancestry in regards to Clifford Inn, not the government, but the governance of Clifford Inn. Before we move on, read that for him, Archbishop.
Governance and structure. Clifford's Inn was ruled by its council, which was led by a principal. As well as the principal, the council consisted of 12 barristers, all elected by the inn members and who enjoyed certain rights. They could hold chambers whenever they wanted and sat at a separate upper table to dine. The principal.
Hold on. For all those who are viewing this content that the King's Bench is revealing to you, we are now bringing the abstract, the spook, to concrete. So you no longer have to question who I am, because you're now are partaking of what we call the blood, what they call the great feast of the blood of Christ. This is what we're talking about. The history dealing with the Golden Grail. All that stuff you see in the movies, you're now taking part in that. the bread and the precious wine. All this happened at the time of Jesus. When you think about the Last Supper dealing with 12 disciples, these are the 12 barristers. All right? This is going back into the time when you knew nothing of. And it's been present, it's been preserved throughout indefinite time. How we know that? Through what we call the New Jersey Province Council, New Jersey Provincial Council, which has what? 12 members. 12 members. We're going to show you that in a second. But it's just beautiful to see that the historical illusionary theories that were created by these theologians, i.e. these divines, that's going back all the way to Westminster Abbey, have preserved this story to those who are heirs and agnetic succeeders of these estates, have come to the awareness of who they are. Each one who the privy to this meeting today have 30 seconds to reflect that. Archbishop, you can go first.
So point of interest, brothers and sisters, the fact now we're bringing you the spook to reality is those 12 barristers were the 12 disciples. And those 12 disciples had to be disciplined within the law. So only way for you to be able to move forward in this reality, you have to understand the law and you must be disciplined underneath the disciples.
What's that? Go ahead, brother Bishop.
As we in all our getting, we're getting understanding of your ancestral law and its jurisprudence. And as you take in all of these abstract stories, remember there is concrete, tangible living experience that is being used in municipality as a reflection of that law. So remember that it is the law that Jesus said, yeah, I will fulfill the law, not do away with it. So it is in the fulfillment in your gathering and understanding of the knowledge of law that is applicable to oneself and their estate. I yield the floor.
Well said. Speak to it, brother Simpson.
So now, with these 12 barristers, the discipline that's needed and required of us, you have to understand that we have to take it way back, go back to where we know where our time comes from, our estate comes from, which is time immemorial, 1189. We have to understand that discipline and take it all the way back to the roots of the tree. Understand where you come from and where your tongue lies in terms of English law, where we all stem back to. Our names, everything that we do stems back to English law and going all the way to the Magna Carta as well. Do not forget that.
Well said. Well said. Brother Burgess. Can't hear you, Noble.
You muted.
Can't hear you, Noble.
You have to unmute yourself.
Well, my bad. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I said I'm kind of lost for words because all is being revealed. Everything that I thought was either false or had questions about is being shown clear. You know what I mean? It ain't no more debate. I see what needs to be done. You should, well, everybody who's watching should feel the same way.
Well said. Well said. Okay, so as we can see, we know that the time era of Clifford's Inn starts around the 14th century. Okay, now this is very important because we know our story goes back further than that. And a lot of it had to do with the separation of church and state. As we said that most of the lawyers who entered or who sought education in Clifford's Inn were actually sought by the clergy. So that means clergy were actually attorneys or representatives for the people. And as we know that it goes back to the time of the 13th century, dealing with the time of King Henry III of England. All right, goes into the time of what we call the Crusades. All right, you had quite a few of them. But what's paramount is the time of the Third Crusade. This is around the 11th century, 1054. The time around what we call the East and West schisms between the East Orthodox Church and the Latin churches, and in lieu of what we call the schisms or divisions between the worship of what we call the martyrs, saints, and the mysteries concerning their worshiping what we call in the abstract Jesus Christ, which we know is no other than King Edgar the Peaceful, who I'm the reincarnation of. It's very important to understand that most of the concerns in that time and era of 1054 has been talked about, but people take their focus off the substance and not the form. Can nothing happen without the ruler authorizing it or responding to these events as a going time and the particular territories are being discussed today. And this is about the East and West schisms of the dividing of the church. Because we know that we represent the English Third Temple Church, which is actually a reformation of the English Church of England. And this is very important because in the present day North America, we have what we call the Church of England, which was established by under what we call the auspice of what we call the Anglican religion. We know the founder of the Anglican religion is Joseph of Ribrismuth. And Joseph of Ribrismuth was one responsible for taking Jesus' body off the cross and hiding it in the cave. And this is called the history concerning the Holy Grail and the cross of Jesus. And this story goes into the missing years of Jesus Christ, who, when he was brought over to what they call Glastonbury, England. All right, this gets into the story with William Blake. William Blake gets into his prophetic story. He was a prophet about did those feet step into England in those days. And when they're making reference to them, they're talking about right here. How are we going to prove it? You're going to hear it from the root of somebody from, hey boy, 1 second, give me 1 second.
There's a story of, oh, yeah, all right.
Somebody started.
I had a point of,
Go ahead, make your inquiry.
I just wanted to make a point of interest to the viewers that Jesus' lost years in English that the King has just revealed to you is, imagine that being a secret to the rest of the world. And tenures was held because of the kings and such at the time.
You're breaking up, Bishop Murphy.
War, so just wanted to pick up.
Repeat that last part, Bishop Murphy.
Oh, the story of Jesus's lost years being revealed in now on the King's bench, and it so happened that he was in England. So this which we consider secret or sacred knowledge being revealed to you now. I yield the floor.
Great response. Great response. Anybody else want to say something? Everybody use the floor. Okay, they want to hear this beautiful lesson. All right. Now here we have our quick skit. It's about 16 minutes, but I think it's worth watching because it gives the people who have been taught a history based off the educational format that they have been in, and it will give them to be able to see that throughout this whole presentation, England is not in the picture. All right. Now we know in the year 1054, resulting from the East and West schisms, this happened at the time of the King William the Conqueror. William was the son of the devil, called Robert the Devil, and he invaded Normandy. Okay, Normandy is considered a part of France, and we know France, Spain, and we know that on the east of that is what we call, what is now called the United Kingdom, and that's England, Ireland, and Scotland. And what's west of that is considered what they call the New World. But we let you know that this was England, Ireland, and Scotland, what we call Anglo-America, prior to the colonization of immigrants who migrated through the time eras of these as a result of the East and West schisms, and bringing over these particular forms of worship that are abstract, which affects us and our posterity to this present day. So this is something that you guys will be able to balance out, because these are what we call checks and balances. So let's hear it and watch it. It's only 16 minutes, but it's worth it.
Having focused so much on Russian history, I've grown a deep fascination.
You got to pause it 1 second, King. I'm probably going to play because it's actually echoing through your speakers. You got to pause it 1 second, King, because we can't hear it. Your speaker muted out. You gotta unmute your speaker. Yeah, your phone muted. You got to unmute it, and then the video is echoing. So we got to actually play it on mine, so that way it don't echo.
Okay, all right. 1 second. Stop it. Stop share.
YouTube.
Stop. Give me 1 second.
All right. Well, what's the name of the video?
It's called why is it still playing? All right.
It's not playing on our side.
Okay. That's me. That was me.
All right.
I left meeting by mistake. I'm tripping over here.
With ecumenical councils, which were all held in the East.
I'm sent you now, Archbishop.
All right. Let me go ahead and check.
Okay.
Before you scroll away, you need to hear this. Republican.
That's me.
No, that's me. Trying to listen to their commercial.
Give me 1 second. All right, this one.
All right, let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, 3, 2.
Having focused so much on Russian history, I've grown a deep fascination with the advent of Orthodox Christianity's theological divergence with Western Catholicism. This is, of course, due to Russia being primarily Orthodox, but more so due to me taking intense interest in theology during my university days. This is part 1 in a collaboration series with Quill and Ink History, in which we analyze the deep-rooted causes and unfolding of what will become known as the Great Schism of 1054. After this video, I encourage you to watch part 2 of the series on Quill and Ink's channel, so you can get a flavor of the immediate events of the schism and its aftermath. In this video, we will be focusing on the divergence of theology, political power, and culture that allowed the Great Schism to unfold in the first place. During much of the Roman Empire's early existence, Christianity was seen as marginalized and persecuted religion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you can see, the area is composed of, you see the Berber dynasties through the Roman influence.
Yep, right here.
Right, all the way down to Egypt, on up under Jerusalem, Rome, and it stretches all the way down to France and Spain, which is directly across east from that is us.
Yep.
All right. So when they say the Roman Empire, they're showing you how the Roman Empire invaded the original territories which existed of our ancestral estate. All right.
Point of interest.
Oh, so point of interest. Go ahead.
Point of interest. This is pre-Punic War. So when you're thinking about these things, remember Hannibal was fighting against Rome. And after that last battle, now Rome has now inquisitioned or the rest of the world, as it were. I yield the floor.
All right. Well said.
All right, so ready to go?
With countless cases of martyrdom, Perpetua of Carthage, St. Paul the Apostle, and the crucifixion of St. Peter, one of the 12 apostles of Jesus. It was not until the conversion of Emperor Constantine I that the legality of Christianity within the Roman Empire was determined with the Edict of Milan in 313. Yet theology was another matter entirely, which was tackled in the Council of Nicaea, taking place during the summer of 325. Being invoked by the emperor, what is now known as the First Ecumenical Council dealt with theological matters, like calculating the date of Easter, the wording of the creed, which stated basic Christian belief, and most importantly, the doctrines of a man named Arius. To understand Arius, we need to understand the concept of the Trinity, which is quite complex in that it outlines the relationships between
Did it stop?
Archbishop, you're muted.
No, I can hear you.
It stopped.
Oh, it stopped? I thought it was still playing.
The Father is basically the image we have of the Old Testament God, towering over us mortals. The Son is basically the manifestation of God in the material world, Jesus Christ. And the Holy Spirit is essentially the godly person that permeates us in order to live as devout believers. It may seem pedantic, but carefully outlining the relationships between each of these persons was important, as concerns could arise regarding polytheism and the legitimacy of Jesus, which could cause problems. Now, the reason Arius is so important in all of this is because he proposed that the Son of God was a creature made by God from nothing a finite time ago. What Arius is saying is that Jesus isn't of the same divine nature as God. This caused backlash, in which his writings were condemned not once, but twice, with a Second Ecumenical Council at Constantinople in 381. But the damage was done. Many Germanic tribes, like the Ostrogoths, Visigoths, and Vandals that had invaded the Western Roman Empire, actually supported Arius' doctrine and spread it fervently throughout Western Europe and North Africa. And although this was eventually checked by the Byzantine reconquests of former imperial lands, it created the first sign of a divergence between East and West. It also did not help that few Western bishops attended the subsequent ecumenical councils, which were all
See that? Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. Now you see the bishop over in Scotland. He said we couldn't have that.
Let's go back. Let's go back.
So it shows you the Roman influence on the territorial jurisdiction that existed back in the 4th and 3rd century due to the Christianizing of the Anglo-Saxons by Pope Gregory I.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's called the Gregorian mission. They invaded England. This is what's going on. This is a result. The schism is a result of what happened in the time of the 4th century with Pope Gregory I. Go ahead.
Discussions were conducted in Greek, and often the Bishop of Rome was the sole Western representative. This funneled religious authority through Rome in the highly decentralized West, whilst it created a dynamic and close-knit relationship between the now Byzantine Emperor and Patriarch of Constantinople, which often extended its beliefs to territories within or adjacent to the Byzantine Empire. We must understand that Constantine's decision to summon the First Ecumenical Council set a precedent in which later Roman emperors would follow suit, and this didn't create problems with Rome, as the city was under Byzantine control from the 6th to the 8th century, at least nominally. Concurrent to Rome's growing independence, the last universally accepted Ecumenical Council was held in 787. The authority to even summon such councils came from the fact that the Byzantines still viewed themselves as Romans and not merely as successors to the empire. Such thinking also extended to theology, which was mainly recorded in Greek, therefore impeding the West's ability to partake in debate and discussion pertaining to the Trinity. For example, in 6th century Spain, the wording of the creed was changed from "The Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father through the Son" to "The Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and from the Son." Basically, that the Holy Spirit, or the person that spiritually permeates us believers, essentially originates from God the Father and the Son, Jesus Christ. The Byzantines only thought of the Holy Spirit as originating from God the Father, since accepting Jesus' role in the generative process would undermine the doctrine that the Father was a source of Trinitarian persons and the personality of the Holy Spirit. Thus, God the Father would be deemed a theological failure. This Spanish edition was to be known as the Filioque Clause and rapidly spread through Western Europe until it was adopted by Rome in the 11th century. It also didn't help that the stories of early saints were mainly recorded in Greek. Thus, the lack of communication between the Greek-speaking East and Latin-speaking West spurred the intellectual creativity necessary to give rise to such stark theological differences. Paul Collins even goes on to say that the Christian understanding of reality was accepted as basic, and notions of religious pluralism were inconceivable. Therefore, disagreement would fuel isolationism between churches. One such disagreement was the veneration of saints and idols, which was seen as a deep concern for Byzantine Emperor Leo III, who tied it to bad omens, such as the successful Arabic raids in Asia Minor and a massive volcanic eruption near the island of Santorini in 726. The situation essentially created a competition for religious legitimacy with the Muslim Arabs, who also forbade idolatry. The resulting ban on icons in 730 produced a sharp division with Rome, as noted in the hostility of Popes Gregory II and Gregory III. As Rome was still under Byzantine control, the Byzantines were also able to transfer the ecclesiastical diocese of East Illyricum to Constantinople's control, which did not sit well with the Latin Church, as they would lose a substantial amount of revenue. What was known as iconoclasm, or the forbidding of the veneration of saints, idols, and icons, continued under Leo's son, Constantine V, who organized a council at Hieria in 754, although Rome did not participate. It should also be noted that it was during this time when Rome gained its independence from Byzantium. More on that later. It was only when Empress Irene, the widow of Constantine's son, Leo IV, called an ecumenical council on behalf of her son, Constantine VI, and reversed iconoclasm. This would be the seventh and final universally accepted ecumenical council at Nicaea. Even then, Irene saw her son gaining more power day by day, and thus she had him blinded in the same purple chamber where she had given birth to him 26 years earlier.
In January this year, I did ayahuasca with a shaman from Colombia.
Rome was not pleased with the situation. A woman in charge of Byzantium? So in typical medieval fashion, it crowned Charlemagne, the king of the Franks, instead, calling him the emperor of the Romans. Iconoclasm in the Byzantine Empire would further be reimposed by emperors Leo V, Michael II, and Theophilos. But yet again, another imperial widow, Theodora, would reverse this decision for a second and final time. She was able to secure her husband, Theophilos, a posthumous pardon for his heresy, which is why even today he is still not chanted as being heretical in Orthodox churches on the first Sunday in Lent. Talk about true love. But even then, this shows the intense internal divisions regarding the issue in Byzantium, and of course the deteriorating politics with Rome, signaling what was to come centuries later. Let us venture away from theology and backtrack to the political development of the crisis. As had been mentioned, the Second Ecumenical Council of 381 condemned Arianism and whatnot, but it also did something else. The Roman Emperor Theodosius I insisted on the promotion of the sees of Constantinople and Jerusalem to the same patriarchal status as Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch, all three of which had been founded by apostles. So the legitimacy of Constantinople really rested on the fact that it was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the last remaining bastion of the Imperium Romanum, whilst the much weaker Rome stressed its religious and moral authority, known as the doctrine of papal primacy. This is why Rome had to accept the decision in the Fourth Ecumenical Council at Chalcedon in 451. When Byzantium reconquered Rome in the 6th century, it established a military class, or armed ordo, and from this class rose the numerous clans and factions that wrestled for secular control of the city centuries later. This clan class was generally pro-Byzantine and caused a lot of problems for later popes, such as with the cadaver synod of Pope Formosus, in which the decaying body of the 81-year-old was exhumed and tried for heresy. Yeah. However, secular Roman leaders like Alberico II, son of Alberico I of Spoleto and Gamerino, emulated the way in which the Byzantine government was linked with the church, formulating a bureaucratic-style government in which the papacy became a department of state. Rome thus became further and further detached from the Byzantine sphere of influence, Having mingled in Western European affairs and by using kingdoms as political leverage, like how Charlemagne deposed Desiderius of Lombardy at the request of Pope Hadrian I in the 8th century. Just as Italian stability began to falter, Hadrian resumed the pleas of both Pope Stephen II and Paul I for Frankish intervention in troubled peninsular affairs. Even then, the political situation also spilled into the east, with Rome and Constantinople fighting over control of the newly converted Bulgars in the Balkans, who eventually grew restless and simply created their own autocephalous and independent church. At least Formosus got on very well with King Boris as opposed to his own church. Yikes. But Rome also did a bit of hosting, if you know what I mean, as it became custom for disaffected Eastern clerics or monks who had been condemned by the emperor or patriarch to appeal to Rome. Just look when Byzantine Emperor Leo VI was excommunicated by his own patriarch and looked to, you guessed it, Rome. And of course, who could forget the Normans who invaded southern Italy, booted the Byzantines out, and then showed their sympathies to the Latin Church.
You hear that?
Arabs who conquered Syria, Egypt,
Here came the Normans.
Africa in the 7th century. It didn't help that during much of the early medieval period, the Byzantine Empire simply had a defensive posture that limited the possibility of religious power projection. Long story short, there's just too much to say about the political context, so let us now venture away from politics to culture.
Stop. You can stop now.
Popular belief.
So now, unshare.
Brother Burgess.
Where am I?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I know you asleep or what.
Okay. I know it's a long video, but it was paramount because, as you can see, it talked about the East and West schisms, and the last one they mentioned was who? The Normans.
Normans. And they came in underneath when they came in after when they came in after they came into England, they was coming in through there as well.
Mm-hmm. You can cut that off.
All right. Okay.
Okay. That's what's playing.
That might be
Got
your.
me playing. Hold on. I'm computer literate like that. Yes. Wait 1 second. Oh, that's not it. What's still playing? I don't know what's playing.
Is it on your? It's not. Let me see. The phone is not up.
No.
Yeah, there's nothing in the background. I have.
Let's see. Oh, I don't know what the heck is that. We just cut this off, brothers and sisters. Well, ain't nothing open here. All right, let's see here. Okay, you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, that's cool. Good. All right, everybody see the screen?
Yep. Well, you got to, if you ain't share yet.
All right, let me see. What about now?
No, did you share it?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah. All right, here we go. All right, everybody good?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so the video we just watched for the public to see was somebody else studies on the East and West schisms around the time of 1054. And as you can see, the East and West schisms did not include England. It didn't include England, Ireland, and Scotland. It was most of the East and West Byzantine empires, Rome, and we know that most of the Roman influence was by way of what we call invasion. All right. Now we know that we don't have the ability to go back in time, that particular time, because we wasn't there. And this is why we come up with the concept of time immemorial. And we know that most of the so-called general Roman calendar is a result of the recording of saints, martyrs, and the mysteries concerning those saints and martyrs who died on behalf of the so-called abstract story relative to Jesus Christ, which that originated with us, because we know our Jesus Christ was no other than King Edgar the Peaceful. So being that we didn't exist in that time and era, we have to bring it to a time era where we can relate to or be able to be able to collaborate some of these so-called facts that were recorded in the time and era to support our existence in regards to our state, which we're trying to protect. But as you can see, in the year 1054, Great Schism. Now, what's important about this is that we ain't concerned about the events going on because none of those events can be validated. What we're concerned about is what king is existing at this particular time relative to what we call England. Because we're not over in Ireland. I mean, we're not over in India, Africa, and Europe. We know our ancestral extends there, but we know that as we can see, the overthrow of the invasion of the Roman Empire, they extended and they exceeded and usurped our states, who were composed of tribes, of Berbers. All right, so this is very important. And this is the reason why you have to pick and choose your battles. We're choosing a battle and a fight that exists in the records of this time and era that reflect that time and era through what we call time immemorial, that's recorded, that's honored by our judiciary system, i.e. the law. And we know that those who operate in this legal system today originated from the legal system that was established by Clifford Inn. And Clifford Inn is what the people are subject to today. So this is why we have to go back into those events to bring you up to speed about what it is that you left and now is being presented back with, and your ability to be able to preserve that from being taken from you again. I give everybody a couple of 30 seconds to reflect those notes.
So point of interest, like the king said, we have to go back to the time that our ancestors were subjugated under, because our situation that we're dealing with today is because of what happened back then. So even for us to correct this problem that we're dealing with today, we must go back to the time of in the mindset of our ancient ancestors, which goes back at the time immemorial.
Well said.
Well said. My thoughts are that you have time never was where man was not. There were three eras that we are focusing on. I'd like to reiterate the pre or post Punic War, the pre Roman Inquisition, as it were, and its many phases, and then the transition of power into the Spanish and British usurpation of that said inquisitional power or Roman Catholic influence, as it were, on the East-West schisms in the rest of the world. I yield the floor.
I actually don't have any inquiries. You all have made it pretty clear.
All right, that's good. That's good. All right. What about you, Brother Burgess?
Yeah, I'm just absorbing.
Okay, we can keep rolling.
Let's
Right.
Let's get it.
Okay. All right, so as we can see, we're dealing with the East and West Schism as told from the gentleman's perspective, which I give honor to him because he kept it real, and he exposed both sides of the problem, which are resulting in the problem we're having today as a result of us not knowing that history. So it was good for us to go through that. Now, these particular wars or particular events was under kings and monarchs. You know what I'm saying? And our monarchs that were usurped has a direct result of why we're in the condition we're in today, as we're going to prove today, because we're just going to briefly go back over the schisms. And it says the East and West schisms. The East and West schisms, also called the Great Schisms or Schisms of 1054, it's the time era of William the Conqueror, he was king, is the break of communion. Communion is called Eucharist. Eucharist is the worship of the bread and wine in regards to the faith of Jesus. Let's just see if we can get a better, clearer understanding. It's also called Koine, the fellowship of the blood of Christ, of the body of Christ. Koine is transliterated from the Greek, which refers to the consciousness of the fellowship, joint participation to share which one has in anything, a gift jointly contributed, a collection of contribution. It identified the idealized state of fellowship and unity that should exist within the Christian church, the body of Christ. So when you read it in Clifford's End, when it spoke about the government of Clifford's End and the style of that government, it's based off the barristers sitting together, communion, enjoying themselves, talking about things that concern the community. All right, you all right over there, Brother Burgess? You good?
I'm with you. I'm still with you.
Okay. The schism was a culmination of theological and political differences which has developed during the preceding century between the Eastern and Western Christian churches, as you just reviewed by the video we just watched. Now, as you notice in the video, the last one the gentleman mentioned was in the time era of 1054, dealing with the Normans. So now, as we can say, most of the stories dealing with those East and West schisms going back to the Council of Nicene, we know that's not real. Why? Because the story is not validated, because the Gregorian calendar created in 1583 by Pope Clifford XIII was also the time of the general Roman calendar, which was the calendar created for the worshiping of the martyrs and saints and the mysteries concerning Jesus Christ. All right. So now, as we're going to see here, is going to speak about the Norman invasion in Italy. Right here. This is right here. Everybody can see that?
Yep.
It says here in point 1, the main purpose of the papal legation were to seek help from the Byzantine Emperor Constantine IX, Monogmatos, in view of the Norman conquest of southern Italy, and to deal with recent attacks by Leo Orchard against the use of unleavened bread and other Western customs. All right, so here you see a Norman conquest of southern Italy, and we know we had a Norman conquest in England. Right, brothers?
Yep, so it was coming from both sides.
Come from both sides. All right, now what's very important is we're going to come to here we go. This is 1054 AD, Annos Dominios. This is the same year. 1054 was a common year starting on a Saturday, linked with the space of full calendar year of Julian calendar. Now, the Julian calendar is the time of the Berber calendar, which celebrated the new year on January 14th. And it's also the same year that the Berber used, because we know that the Julian history of Julius Caesar was taken from our history of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Now, as you can see here, in the Berber year, the year is 2004. And their year is 1054 AD. So Christ is still here. I mean, Christ has transformed. Why? Because Christ is no other than King Egg of the Peaceful. When King Edward the Peaceful died, you get into the battle for the kingdom of Wessex, or the kingdom of Albany, or Great Britain, as we should say. All right, because we're dealing with the death of Edward the Confessor, which led to the Battle of Hastings, which left the kingdoms, France and England, being to be protected in later times by what we call a pensioning crowns. Now, what's special about this particular calendar and time era of 1054, as we look through the alphabetical order of all the calendars, you see the English regnal year. But do you see an English king reigning at that particular time?
Nope.
No English king. So if there's no English king reigning at that time, and we know that King William the Conqueror was the king ruling at that time, who was from Norman invasion, so that means that he was not an English king, and he was not a Norman, because Normandy goes back to our state dealing with the Plantagenets, who were kings and queens of what we call Anjou, going back to Fulk the third, Fulk the second, Fulk the fifth, Fulk the fifth, who was the father of Godfrey the fifth, Count of Anjou, who married Matilda at the time what we call the Anarchy, which were told in previous lessons if the brothers and sisters who are viewing this podcast know the story. But what's very important is the events that's going on in 1054. So let's briefly go through them. Sultan Tughril leads large Seljuk army out of Azerbaijan into Armenia, possibly to consolidate his frontier while providing incentives for his Turkoman allies in this form of plunder, blase, blase. Europe, battle Mortimer, the Normans, led by Duke William the Conqueror. So here we go. That's William the Conqueror. He's the king, they're telling you. Defeat the French army near Mortimer as it caught up pillage and plundering King Henry I of France, withdraws his army from the Duchess of Normandy as a result of Guy I Count of Ponthieu and captured during the course of the battle. Scotland. So you got things going all over the place. Africa. The Almoravid retake the trading center of Argos, and the Ghana Empire repeated Almoravid incursions aimed at seizing control of the trans-Saharan gold trade, disrupt Ghana, and dominance of the trade route, blase, blase. So all this is going on, religion. None of these things apply to us.
Point of
So go ahead, Archbishop.
What did it say what was going on cosmologically wise? Did it say something about a comet or a supernova or something?
Yes, supernova, July 4th, 1054. Supernova 1054, a nova at first observed by the Chinese, Arabs, and possibly Native Americans near the star Zeta or Tauri. For 20 days, it remained bright enough to be seen in the daylight and the remnants of the Crab Nebula, NGC 1952. Now, we all know what a supernova is.
And point of interest, remember they always, celestial or cosmic events always set the course of what was going to also take place here on the earthly sphere.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that's a big picture of a supernova. That's a galaxy, y'all. Spinning galaxy, wormhole. You know what I'm saying? So our ancestors have transformed this information through the wormholes that's dormant in our DNA, and they have awakened through what we call autobiological memory, when you put your body on autopilot here at the King's Bench, through the instruments of the knowledge that were kept sacred by these so-called philosophers, theologians, who research and study amongst our ancestors when they were here on this physical plane, who we know as the martyrs, the saints, which concerns the mysteries concerning King Edward the Peaceful, who we know is Jesus Christ, which goes back to what we call time immemorial. Follow?
Follow.
Okay. So we know that the problem of the East and West schisms at the time of William the Conqueror, who was invaded England, which was considered the king of Normandy, was the time when our history was being usurped. And this is why it's very important to understand the houses, the particular houses that we're subject to, as we have taught in previous videos at the English Third Temple Church of England. But now it's time to know the law, which our foundation is rooted, which is preserved in Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 28. Right saved in the charge of Great Britain, saved from repeal, meaning that they can't take this away, y'all. They can't take this authority away from you. It's preserved. How we know that? Let's go through this. United States Code. Congressional findings and declarations of purposes. 2016 United States Code, Title 42, the Public Health and Welfare, Chapter 21B, Religious Freedom Restoration. Section 2000 BB, Congressional findings on declaration of purposes. The Congress finds that 1, the framers of the Constitution recognize free exercise of religion as an unalienable right secured and protected in the First Amendment to the Constitution. Now, they mean unalienable. They can't take it away from you. Alienate something means to separate it. Unalienable right means that it's a right you can't take away from you. This is Congress. We know Congress is composed of the General Assembly and the Senate in this present day in government. And we know that under Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 28, our rights under the charge to go back to the party of politics under Parliament is rooted in the Magna Carta. So congressional legislation has to be uniform with the body of politics that exists in the time era of the 13th century under the Acts of Parliament, protected under King Henry III, son of John, the one who signed the Magna Carta, where the Clifford's Inn goes back to. Make sense?
Follow.
Any inquiries from the brothers?
No inquiries at this moment.
Okay. 2, laws neutral toward religion may be burdened. Laws neutral toward religion may burden religious exercise as surely as laws intended to interfere with religious exercise. 3, government should not substantially burden religious exercise without compelling justification. So within the language of this congressional, it still has to be judicially reviewed, because sometimes acts of Congress is not always valid. This is why it must be subject to judicial review. And we know that the Congress that exists now have abandoned the judiciary review in regards to the church, because we know church and state is separated, and authority instructed by our body of politics, known as the New Jersey Provincial Council within the New Jersey province, which the provinces at this particular time under Queen Anne, the Queen of England, under primogeniture continental succession, said there should be a fusion of power of government and view of the executive, legislative, and judicial branch, which they violated, which we know they violated. Why? Because when they established the Provincial Congress in 1789, William Franklin, the illegitimate son of Benjamin Franklin, was trying to keep it restored. And we're restoring what he couldn't do. All right, let's get to it. History. Very important. Brother Bishop Murphy, you can start here.
History of the New Jersey State Constitution.
Part itself. Let's start here, because we know all states are independent states. They became independent states prior to their own creation of their constitution. Now, what's good about this is that for our sake, is that the history of New Jersey in regards to the state constitution precedes the creation of the federal United States federal constitution. It precedes it. It precedes the federal constitution. How we know? Let's look it up. United States federal government, founded in 1789, 232 years ago. Founding of the United States document their Constitution. Jurisdiction, United States of America. 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. Start from here, Bishop Murphy.
The federal government of the United States, U.S. federal government, is the national government of the United States, a federal republic in the North America. I'm gonna start from the beginning. The federal government of the United States, the U.S. federal government, is a national government of the United States, a federal republic in North America, composed of 50 states, a federal district, 5 major self-governing territories, and several islands possessions. The federal government composed of 3 district branches: legislative, executive, and judicial, which powers are vested by the U.S. Constitution in the Congress, the President, and the federal courts, respectively. The powers and duties of these branches are further defined by acts of Congress, including the creation of executive department and courts inferior to the Supreme Court.
Okay, now it says there is a federal republic. Federal, let me see where that's at. Read it word for word.
Federal republic denoting back to Rome, as in a Roman republic.
Yes, exactly. Federal republic, and this brings up the Federalists and the Democratic Republican Party.
Yep.
The Federalists and the Democratic Republican Party. This is the foundation of the United States of America. Then this goes back to what we call your founding fathers, brothers and sisters. Your founding fathers. So your federal government, as read by Bishop Murphy, is a federal republic which consists of your Federalists or your federal system and the Republican parties who are Democratic. And this was established by Thomas Jefferson and George Washington with the assistance of Alexander Hamilton. All right, let's move a little further. All right, just read. All right, everybody know what the legislative, executive, and judicial branch are. And you know the fourth branch of government are the agencies that were created by creation of what we call congressional acts. And like we say, congressional acts can sometimes be invalid if it's not in lieu of their constitution. Now, as we can see, the Constitution for the United States of America was created in 1789. All right? 1789. But the Constitution of New Jersey precedes that. And it goes back to the time of the wars of the Revolutionary War of the United States with Great Britain. So this brings us to here. History of New Jersey State's Constitution. Start there, Brother Murphy, Bishop Murphy.
You muted, Brother Murphy.
All right. Originally, the state of New Jersey was a single British colony, the province of New Jersey. After the English Civil War, Charles II assigned New Jersey as a proprietary colony to be held jointly by Sir George Carteret and John Berkeley, the first Baron Berkeley of Stratton. Eventually, the collection of lands and fees, or quit rents, from colonists provided inadequate for the colonists' profitability. Sir George Carteret sold his share of the colony to the Quakers in 1673. Following the sale of the land was divided into East and West Jersey in 1681. West Jersey adopted the Constitution in 1683. East Jersey adopted one as well in 1702. The colonies were untied again. Oh, excuse me, were united.
That's wrong, Bishop Bishop Murphy. It's East Jersey. Was Jersey was adopted? But hold on, I'm wrong. Hold on, give me 1 second. East Jersey and West. Okay, yeah. All right, they both adopted their constitution in 1683. Both constitutions were adopted in 1683. No, I'm sorry.
Correct.
It says in West Jersey in 1681 adopted the Constitution, and in 1683 East Jersey adopted one as well. Parts out. All right. I thought I
All
heard
right.
you. Apologize. Continue on.
West Jersey adopted a constitution in 1683, and East Jersey adopted one as well in 1702. And the colonies were.
It says in 1681,
You read those
West Jersey adopted a constitution, and then in 1683, East Jersey adopted one as well.
That's right. My eyes jumped around. Excuse me.
It's all right.
Okay, so the following of the sale, the land was divided into East and West Jersey. In 1681, West Jersey adopted a constitution, and in 1683, East Jersey adopted one as well.
Okay.
Period. Going on. 1702, the colonies were united again under Anne, Queen of Great Britain, and adopted the Constitution in 1776.
Stop. Okay, this is beautiful. It says that the first Constitution of New Jersey was called the Concession Agreement. It said under Concession Agreement, under George Corrett and John Berkeley, they created separate constitutions and they gave quiet rent, which we're going to read. And it said that in 1702, it became a royal colony under Queen Anne, and it adopted its constitution in 1776. Because Queen Anne was Queen of Great Britain. Now remember, the rights of our authority derives from Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 28, rights under charge of Great Britain. So that means Great Britain is still extended to the time ever of Queen Anne under monarchical, constitutional monarch, which is very important that the people who are viewing this lecture from Clifford's Inn must truly understand. Because as you can see, George Carteret and John Berkeley created their so-called constitution, because prior to it be called New Jersey by George Carteret and John Berkeley, it was called Belwick of Jersey. All right, continue to read, Bishop Murphy.
New Jersey has been governed under the authority of several constitutional documents. As a colony, the first, the Concession and Agreement 1665, was written by the colony lord proprietors Sir George Carteret and John Berkeley, the first Baron Berkeley of Stratton, which offered board provisions for religious freedoms. After the interest of Lord Berkeley's and Carteret's were sold to investors, New Jersey was divided into two distinct proprietary colonies, West Jersey and East Jersey, each with their own constitution enacted 1681, 1683, respectively. The proprietors were compelled to cede their political authority to the crown, and both colonies were reunited in 1702 as crown colonies under the direct command of Queen Anne. At the onset of American Revolution, New Jersey was governed by warning British colony authority William Franklin, son of Benjamin.
Hold on. Before we do that,
okay.
Let's go in and see what that Queen Anne directed the first governor, Viscount Cornbury, how the government should be functioning before we get into talking about at the onset of the Revolutionary War. All right. Let's see what she said. Okay. Where is it at?
Province of New Jersey.
Okay, right here. Now, this is New Jersey Provincial Council, because Queen Anne was calling the shots. Now, read what Queen Anne said. Now, we're still talking about New Jersey Provincial Council. Now, look at how many seats there. How many seats are there, Bishop Murphy?
12.
The same amount of seats in Clifford's Inn. All right. List of term. How long was their term, Bishop Murphy?
Indefinite.
And under what authority is it?
The Crown.
Okay, so the federal government established their constitution in 1789. This is when they broke away from Great Britain. But before they broke away from Great Britain, New Jersey's constitution was established in 1776 under Queen Anne. She passed it to the House of Hanover in 1714. She was not supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so read just a recap of the body of politics under the government that was ran by cognatic succession under Queen Anne instead of agnatic succession. Continue to read, Bishop Murphy.
The New Jersey Provisional Council was the upper house of the New Jersey legislature. The colonial rule until was replaced by the New Jersey Legislative Council under New Jersey Constitution in 1776. The history. The Provisional Council was established in 1702 upon the surrender of proprietors of East Jersey and those of West Jersey of the right of the government to Queen Anne. Queen Anne's government united the colonies as a province of New Jersey, royal colonies, established a new system of government. The instructions from Queen Anne to Vice Count Conboy, the first royal government, New Jersey, first royal governor of New Jersey, outlined the fusion of power systems, which allowed for an overlap of executive and legislative and judicial authority. It provided a bicameral legislative consisting of council and general assembly.
Okay.
On December
That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Now we see that it was bicameral, legislative, fusion of government, executive, legislative, and judicial branch. When we look in the box, it says the upper house and of the New Jersey legislative. You don't see no lower house there. There is no general assembly. There is none because it only deals with lords.
Exactly.
Where are those lords? They're focusing now on what they call the General Assembly, which is now, and which was established under the Provincial Congress. Where is it at? It says Council and the General Assembly. The General Assembly is the lower house. That's the how that derived or preceded or called the House of Commons, which came through the House of Tudors, which was established by the House of Burghers under Virginia Burghers, which were known as what they call freemen. All your so-called founding fathers were considered part of the Virginia Assembly called the House of Burghers. All right, let's go back here. History of New Jersey's Constitution. Because now we know the instructions given to by Queen Anne. Now let's see what happened when those instructions were violated as a result of them not following what Queen Anne said. All right, you can start right here. We left Queen Anne, we start at the onset.
At the onset of the
Bishop Murphy.
At the onset of the American Revolution, New Jersey was governed by warring British colonial authority. Waning. Okay, waning, excuse me. New Jersey was governed by waning, so losing power, British colonies authorities. William Franklin. The province last royal governed before the American Revolution. So William Franklin was the province's last royal governor before the American Revolution, 1775, 1783. Was marginalized in the last of his tenure as the province was run de facto by the Provisional Congress of New Jersey. Franklin considered the Provisional Congress to be illegally assembled and considered an illegal assembly, and attended to restore royal authority. In June 1776, the Provisional Congress formally deposed Franklin and had him arrested. Adopted the first state's constitution on July 2nd, 1776. May I stop for a second and make an inquiry?
Yes, sir.
I mean, This is infighting in America, pre-American Revolution, British Crown Colony, the union of church and state, and the de facto new constitution established, which has its own body. I mean, this is just amazing as we're reading it right here. The newly formed state of New Jersey elected William Livingston as its first governor in August 31st, 1776, and a position he would be reelected to until his death, 1790. While New Jersey was in a state of war, delegates from the Provisional Congress drafted the first constitution in a span of 5 days and ratified it only 2 days later. Its primary objective was to provide a basic governmental framework that would assume control over the territory after the collapse of royal authority and maintain civil order. This constitution served as a charter document for the state's government for the next 68 years. Among its provisions, the documents granted suffrage rights to unmarried women of African Americans who were who met the requirements of possessing sufficient assets or property to freeholders. Now, again, let me stop and make another inquiry.
Go ahead, brother. Teach.
Here they are making concessions, specifically in writing to African Americans a bunch. Now, why don't they say Englishmen, Englishwomen, or even Americans, but particular African Americans who met the requirements of assets and properties as freeholders? Okay.
And commissioners.
The legislator was elected.
Go ahead, Archbishop.
No, like you said, those are the commissioners. So what's going on right now is people who look like us are getting technically the rights of Englishmen. So that way they can hold the true Englishmen down. This is like how, for instance, how our our municipalities or even the so-called government today are being ran by women and so-called African Americans. And again, we know that democracy and Republican, all that came in via African Americans. So it's only going to make sense. They're going to have those who came in or who they brought in to keep order, i.e. keep the so-called new franchise going, while the other ones are still trying to figure out things and try to maintain some form of civility within themselves. Because remember, we're at war and now becoming prisoners of war. And not only becoming prisoners of war, but now we're losing our identity, as you can see, amongst of becoming something new, making us have to assimilate. And I digress.
I that's an excellent point of interest. And to camelback onto what the Archbishop was saying, this is a time of war. This is, as I've done in my dissertation, how my family's monarchy was dissolved in this time. Mm-hmm. And would join the cadet branches of war because we were prisoners of war, as it were, under the usurped crown and fighting under the crown colonies. And when they obviously had to go into negotiation or succeeded with the American wars, they jumped ships. So there was a lot of your family history and point of interest. The first 9 American presidents were melanated people, Eli, John Hanson, and so on and so forth, before George Washington. So these inquisitional tactics were the usurpation of all authoritative power. But what the point we're making is that these authoritative power were melanated people in this time. And after the Civil War, they were losing their not only surnames, heretical names, but now their identity as people, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And you hear a lot of groups talking about the Freedmen Bureau, you know, and when you freed, it's not free. You know what I'm saying? When you freed, that means you're still subject to slavery. You know what I'm saying? So as we know, when the Masonic lodges and stuff, who reflected the so-called Knights of Templars, this particular history is kept sacred by them and is held through fealty by way of being trustees and in lieu of the acquisitions, what they call the acquisition of the so-called peoples who using the laws of discovery to take over our possessions, do what they call common recovery by practicing what they call being simple. Because being simple, the highest title in this land is being simple, which is only can be held by freeholders, which are now in turn county commissioners. So well
Indeed.
said.
Well said. And just one more point of interest, as the king was saying, see, most people think that, Templars were chasing after such things like the Grail and such, but you remember, if in this story they're telling you that Jesus' body himself was taken from that rock to England, then there's more than meets the eye. So remember, as you study more yourselves, so that you can show oneself approved. So it's just a really awesome thing how we bring that abstract story into the concrete now. Is vision, it's vital information seen in your now, because this is applicable information related to your state of being or lack thereof. For those that are viewing, I yield the floor.
Well said, Bishop Murphy. Brother Simpson or Brother Burgess, y'all want to say something to that?
I mean, I just learned something what y'all was saying. So pertaining to yeah, I'm like I said, I'm sitting here soaking it up.
All right, that's what's up. Yes. What about you, Brother Burgess?
No other inquiries at this time.
Oh, that was Brother Burgess.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's Brother Simpson. No other inquiries at this time.
You good? Any input, or you good for now?
I'm good for now.
I love it because the same position you brothers were in, Bishop Murphy was in. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't saying nothing. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Now you can't get him to shut up. The same thing with Archbishop Belmont. He's the same position. Now you can't get him to shut up. So I'm creating some monsters. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I need y'all. I don't need y'all. Y'all need to do what it is that you're called to do. And being members of this, you're definitely being taught well. And like I said, I know it. So as you can see, the founding of our fundamental government, i.e. the Provincial Council within the New Jersey province, was usurped by the institution of the province of New Jersey Provincial Congress, which was the one who usurped the authority that the First World Governor, Viscount Cornbury, was trying to preserve under the instructions of Queen Anne. Even though Queen Anne was the ruling monarch under the House of Stuart, who descended down from King James VI of Scotland, and presumed to be the first king of England. We know that's not the case. So all that story has pretty much been explained to you, but we want to continue on explaining the foundation of this federal government, which is composed of the executive, legislative, judicial branch, which got its founding in 1789 by their declaring their independence from Great Britain in 1783 by way of the Treaty of Paris. Now, as we're going to see, as a result of the Federalists and the Democratic Republican parties, all these were a result of the funding that was done by creation of what we call the Department of Treasury under Secretary of Treasury. And through the Secretary of Treasury, this was a result of Alexander Hamilton. So we're going to get an understanding about him, because without finances, how are you going to have a nation? And we know this nation called America functioning off Federal Reserve notes. You know what I'm saying? We know that's fiat. And we know that in order for the fiat to be created, as we know as the national bank, this had to be done by way of a charter. And our ancestors gave in those charters to establish the national bank. As you're going to hear Thomas Jefferson tell Alexander Hamilton in regards to reaching out to the Bank of England for a charter. And you got banks of England over here in North America, which we're going to show you. So we're going to show you how far our money stretch, ours versus yours. You know what I'm saying? We ain't talking about paper money. We're talking about gold and silver, bullion. All right. Because we know the first ruler of Jerusalem was Godfrey Bullion. Godfrey Bullion was the son of Isis II, who married Goda or God Gifu, who was the son of Ethelred the Unready, who was the son of King Edgar the Peaceful, which you know as Jesus Christ, which I am the reincarnation of. How I know that? Because we know this history. All right.
Let's not forget the term overseas possession.
Overseas possessions, yes, sir. Let's see where we're going here. Alexander, First Bank of America, because this is going to give you a better clarity of the founding of the United States relative to the funding that it received from the Bank of England under what we call the Kingdom of the United Kingdom, which we know was called Great Britain, through the Treaty of Union of 1707, which extends down from the preceding Great Britain, which we call Albion, through the creation of the Albion Empire. So I'm going to get Brother Simpson to read from this point. First Bank of the United States from Federal Reserve history. All right, this is our source. This is a history from the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve did with the Federal Reserve Bank. And banking is a national banking system that was instituted over here in North America. What's that, Bishop Murphy?
I was seeing Brother Burgess. I was just showing him, and that's that silver crown. That's that 2 pounds, but this is troy ounce.
Okay.
1 troy ounce pound.
Real money, y'all. That's that real money. We're gonna get back to that. Go ahead and read, Brother. Who I said, Brother Burgess or Brother Simpson?
Brother Simpson.
Okay.
The First Bank of the United States, 1791 to 1811. Alexander Hamilton's grand experiment in central banking began in 1791 to assist a post-Revolutionary War economy and ended 20 years later. Wow, look at
The
that.
bank, y'all. Picture of the bank. It ain't exact replica, but that's what they were dealing with at that particular time. Here in North America, not England.
Yep.
This is in Philadelphia. All right, now listen to the science. This is the bank in Philadelphia. All right. Now watch who Alexander Hamilton requests a charter from to establish the national bank based off the charter that extends back to 1215 of our ancestors. Read, Brother Simpson.
Okay. The war for independence was over, but all was not well. The United States of America, a name the new country had adopted under the Articles of Confederation, was beset with problems. The 1780s saw widespread economic disruption. The new nation's leaders had their work cut out for them, reestablishing commerce and industry, repaying war debt, restoring the value of the currency, and lowering inflation. One prominent architect of the fledgling country, Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of Treasury under the new Constitution, had ambitious ideas about how to solve some of these problems. One of those was creating a national bank. In December 1790, Hamilton submitted a report to Congress in which he outlined his proposal. Hamilton used the charter of the Bank of England as his basis for his plan. Wow. He argued that an American version of this institution could issue paper money, also called banknotes or currency, provide a safe place to keep public funds, offer banking facilities for commercial transactions, and act as the government's fiscal agent, including collecting the government's tax revenues and paying the government's debts. Wow.
That was good, right, Brother Simpson? That was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Keep reading. It's about to get even better, Noble. Keep reading.
Not everyone agreed with Hamilton's plan. Thomas Jefferson was afraid that a national bank would create a financial monopoly that might undermine state banks and adopt policies that favored financiers and merchants who tended to be creditors or over plantation owners and family farmers who tended to be debtors. Such an institution clashed with Jefferson's vision of the United States as a chiefly agrarian society, not one based on banking, commerce, and industry.
Stop right there. Archbishop, stop right there. Archbishop, break down agrarian society for the brothers and sisters.
The agrarian society is pretty much like agriculturalists, farmers, people who rely on nature or mostly the land to survive. And that's what our ancestors as Berbers, that's what we were. We were agriculturalists or agrarian society where we depended on the land. And that's the reason why we moved according to the celestial spheres, the sun, the moon, the stars, so that way we can plant our food accordingly.
But now what we do, we're going to the supermarket, grocery store, the bodega. You know what I'm saying? These are all the places we run into, but they're not being owned by us.
Exactly.
They're not owned by us. Thank the creator for Bishop Murphy. Brother starting his own store for us, by us. So we got to give honor. The brother is doing initiatives even in his state of growth. So he on the right track. Hats off to you, Bishop Murphy.
Word up.
Continue to read, Brother Simpson. Brother Simpson.
Okay. Was it Jefferson?
Yeah.
Okay. Jefferson also argued that the Constitution did not grant the government the authority to establish corporations, including a national bank. Despite the opposing voices, Hamilton's bill cleared both the House and the Senate after much debate. President Washington signed the bill into law in February 1791.
Okay, that's all we need to read. So here we see that Alexander Hamilton extended to the Bank of England for his charter to establish a national bank here in what we call America, to finance the new fledgling nation. And the only way they can do it was created based off fiat money, i.e. paper money. But Thomas Jefferson spoke and said he couldn't do it because it would create a monopoly and it would be a violation of the Constitution, because the Constitution did not create national banks or corporations. Very important. How are we going to show you? We're going to show you in a second, as soon as Bishop Murphy makes his inquiry.
You mean to tell me they fought for independence and then went back and asked them for a loan? I'll yield the floor.
Yes, they did, Bishop Murphy.
Point of interest. It sounds like some ungrateful children, don't it?
Yes. You got two titties. Now you actually stuck on somebody else's titties. Come on, man. Come on. Now what's very important, because it says that even though Thomas Jefferson, a Democratic Republican who opposed a federalist system, because he was a Secretary Treasurer as well, he became Secretary Treasurer. So how you opposing the creation of a department that funds national banks, but yet being an opposer of it? All right, and you disagree with Alexander Hamilton because it would be a violation of the authority that gave you the ability to do what you do. And the Constitution did not allow national banks or even corporations. It would violate state banks. What state banks? National banks of the state of the Bank of England, our body of politics, what we call England. How do we know that? Let's get a history of the Bank of England. Okay. Governor and company of the Bank of England. Where's it located at, Brother Simpson? Headquarters
in Threadneedle Street, London, England, United Kingdom.
Now, hold on. Thread and needle. Thread and needle. You know how small a needle is to thread it? So what we have did is we have connected and knitted our history back together through this Bank of England, because without finance, you don't have a nation. How we know? The ownership of this so-called Bank of America is who?
Owned by HM government through the government legal department.
Okay, so let's find out who HM department is. What that say?
Government of the United Kingdom.
Okay. What year was it established?
It's established in 1707.
This is through the Treaty of Union of Great Britain under the House of Stuarts, who were the kings or presumptive kings of the kings of England. How we know that? Let's go to history. Because it said right here, where is that? Who is governing the United Kingdom? Who is appointed by?
Appointed by the monarch of the United Kingdom, Queen Elizabeth II.
Now, she's not the Queen of England. Elizabeth II is the Queen of the House of Windsor, who got their authority from the House of Hanover, who got their authority from the House of Stuart, who got their authority from the House of Tudors, who are all illegitimate. Why? Because John Gaunt was considered the last ruler of an agnatic succession going back through time immemorial. We ain't gonna do that. We already been there. All right. Very important about the United Kingdom is the history of the United Kingdom government, and read what it says. Brother Simpson.
History. The United Kingdom is a constitutional monarchy in which the reigning monarch, that is the king or queen, who is the head of the state at any given time, does not make any open political decisions. All political decisions are taken by the government and parliament. This constitutional state of affairs is the result of a long history of constraining and reducing the political power of the monarch, beginning with the Magna Carta in 1215.
Okay, so that Magna Carta and the body of politics of the citizens, inhabitants, and residency who created that charter only have the authority, because it said that that Magna Carta limited the authority of a monarch such as them. Why? Because they have no authority to make any political decisions that are taken on behalf of the government or parliament of the United Kingdom. Why? Because according to the Prescription Act, Scotland and Ireland, they don't have the right to the estate in lieu of reversion or adverse possession, which we have a right to. Why? Because it's based off the history of the general, what we call the history in regards to the mysteries of the saints and martyrs who honored Jesus Christ, who we, as we know, who is King Edgar the Peaceful, who descended down through the kings and queens in lieu of preserving our history, which was done by the Plantagenet Crown under John, the one who signed the Magna Carta, and Pope Innocent recognized by way of usurpation of what we call the Roman Catholic churches, that the English church has a right to be free and independent forever. Go ahead, Bishop Murphy.
I concur.
How could one not? All right. Let's keep. Anybody else want to say something? All right, brother Burgess. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Man, I'm with you. Really, I got me thinking about my studies I did maybe about 2 years back dealing with Gene Kennedy. That he was saying that the Bank of England was going to foreclose on America and come and collect everything. So it's kind of just connecting dots for me.
There you go, brother. That's how we do it, brother. All right. So the United Kingdom government is governed or ownership of the Bank of England, and we know that the Bank of England itself was established by the Treaty of Union under what we call the House of Stuarts, when they created what they call the United Kingdom of Great Britain, which came from Great Britain. But we know that the provinces, as we read in regards to the history of the state constitution of New Jersey, that when the profiteers surrendered their authority back to the crown, it became a royal colony in 1702. And the crown is England, not Great Britain.
Mm-hmm.
They said England. England goes back to time immemorial. How we know that? Because King James cannot be the first king of England. If that was, that meant time immemorial started there. And we know that's a damn lie. Time immemorial started in 1189 with the House of Plantation. So who in the hell is King James claiming to be a king of the kings and queens who existed from time immemorial? He's a fraud.
Here.
He's a fraud. All right.
Word.
Let's see some more fraud. Archbishop, you want to say something?
Oh no, I just said this is verifying, like, you know, the usurpation and how they pretty much not just try to take our land, they try to take our money.
Yes,
they did
sir.
take our money.
Yes, sir. And who started? Alexander Hamilton. Read on a little bit more for me, Brother Simpson, before we let Brother Burgess take his turn.
Alexander Hamilton, January 11, 1755 or 1757 to July 12, 1804. He was an American statesman, politician, legal scholar, military commander, lawyer, banker, and economist. He was one of the founding fathers of the United States. He was an influential interpreter and promoter of the United States Constitution, as well as the founder of the nation's.
Hold on. My page is not responding. Hold on.
You can hit the wait. Sometimes it'll go through.
Oh, let me close out. You know, we messing with the internet speed. It can't keep up with us. All right, let me go out. Let me go back in. Okay, where would it be at? Let me share. Y'all can see that?
No, you haven't shared it yet.
Okay. All right, here we go. Now listen to this. This is just like crazy that this stuff been in front of our face all our life, and nobody had been able to put this stuff together but the King's Bench and Clifford Inn. Go ahead and read, Brother Simpson.
He was one of the founding fathers of the United States. He was an influential interpreter and promoter of the United States Constitution, as well as the founder of the nation's financial system, the Federalist Party, the United States Coast Guard, and the New York Post newspaper. As the first Secretary of Treasury, Hamilton was the main author of the economic policies of George Washington's administration. He took the lead in federal government's funding of the state's debts, as well as establishing the first nation's first two de facto central banks, i.e. the Bank of North America and the First Bank of the United States. Make sure y'all hear that.
Y'all heard that, de facto.
The nation's first two de facto central banks. You have the Bank of North America and the Bank of the First Bank of the United States. A system of tariffs and friendly trade relations with Britain.
Okay,
His
that's all
vision,
we need.
Okay.
That's fine. As we can see, you see George Washington, you see John Adams. George Washington was the first president. John Adams was the second president. Alexander Thomas Jefferson was the third president. And all these people are down together. These were your founding fathers, brothers and sisters. They all conjugated together and created a government based off the national debt, which Congress took upon themselves. Go ahead, Archbishop.
And point of interest, everybody who came and did business with these cats, i.e. created treaties with them, are in bed, i.e. also are the downfall or cause of the downfall of the English people. Everybody who's trying to support a so-called treaty that the United States created because they're all trying to partake in this commercial human trafficking, you all are in bed. That means you all are the enemy against God's people.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
another point of interest, it said that he created the United States Coast Guard. Most of what we got going on is based off of admiralty law. Think about it, the Coast Guard, the waters, the sea, right?
Exactly. Bishop Murphy, want to say something?
Well, we know that he who controls your trade can, severely control your state of being in the waters and your commerce, and that the temple was turned into trade and commerce, and Yeshua turned over the table. So our whole beloved land was turned into a commercial territory, as it were.
Well said. Read this top paragraph, Brother Simpson. Hamilton led
the Treasury Department as a trusted member of President Washington's first cabinet. Hamilton successfully argued that the implied powers of the Constitution provided the legal authority to fund the national debt, to assume states' debts, and to create the government-backed Bank of the United States, which was the first bank of the United States.
This part right here is beautiful. It said implied powers. When you imply something, it means to implicate, means to bring forth or put forth, like a bill. An act of Congress is a result of a bill being presented and passed. As we know, the bill that was passed to establish this national bank through implication, even though Thomas Jefferson disagreed with it, i.e. the Democrat Republican Party on behalf of the people, George Washington signed it anyway. And he was the founder of the federal government, i.e. the executive, your legislative, and judicial branch. All right? And he said he got Congress to fund the national debt, the nation's debt, and the nation's debt is still going up. All right, let's go a little further. All right, let's see. Now let's see how many national banks, let me make sure I didn't skip nothing. All right, let's see how many Bank of Englands that we got here in North America. Y'all see that?
Now, point of interest, why would the Bank of England be in a location that's not of its own if this wasn't England?
Because that's trade name. You got the name of Bank of England. So if you're doing business in a name outside of the authority to do it, it's called appropriation of name and likeness. That's a violation of trade and commerce, trademark name. You know what I'm saying? They're using the name, but don't have the authority to use the name. Why? Because now they have to prove who they say they are. And as Thomas Jefferson said, the Constitution did not allow national banks or corporations. All right? There's one here. Bank of England. Bank of England, Morrisville, Pennsylvania. Bank of England, Freehold, New Jersey. Bank of England, Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Bank of England, New York, New York. Bank of England, Reading, Pennsylvania. Bank of England, Melville, New York. Milford, Connecticut. Bradford, Connecticut. Berlin, Connecticut. Frederick, Massachusetts.
King, where's their Bank of England in England?
London.
My goodness, there's so many in there.
Bank of England, Mystic, Connecticut. Cranston, Rhode Island. Cranston, Rhode Island. Braintree, Massachusetts. Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts. Hingham, Massachusetts. Boston, Massachusetts, Andover, Massachusetts, Plattsburgh, New York, Chester, Ohio. Next page.
And even where
Danville,
it says
Virginia, Cleveland,
established,
Ohio, North Royalton. These are all banks of England. And we know the authority of the Bank of England got its authority from the Magna Carta. Because we know the United Kingdom under governments relative to the Bank of England was established in the Treaty Union of 1707 with the creation of Great Britain, which brought the Kingdom of England to become extinct. All right. This ain't something we did talking about off the breath of our air. This is facts. Brother Burgess, you can take over as we come to our closing. So we know that as it stated with Alexander Hamilton, he created what we call the Department of Treasury. So let's do a little investigation about the Department of Treasury, as well as the officer known as the Secretary of Treasury.
Point of interest. So pay attention, because once again, we just showed you that if there's a Bank of England over here, there got to be some Englishmen over here too. But in the census record, there's nothing on there for Englishmen. So they got to be somewhere.
Word up. And all that interest they paid on the national debt that they owe, in lieu of the charter they received, based off the interest got to pay based off their charter that was given to them by our ancestors. Our ancestors, the Plantagenet crown that flies behind us in the English Third Temple Church as reformed from the English Church of England, as we know, got their authority as a result of the Plantagenet alliance between France and England. It's an alliance, all right? Because America's foundation is based off that Magna Charta. How we know? Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 28. They got to explain that. If America broke away from Great Britain in 1783, why the hell you got a statute in there presently in regards to Great Britain? Because if the Treaty of Union dissolved himself from America and you still got Great Britain here, that means that King James, Elizabeth II is out the picture. They protect this jurisdiction, but they don't have control over it. Why? Because we know this is Jersey over here. Go ahead, Archbishop Belmont.
Now, point of interest, now, they said that they broke away from Great Britain, but they never said they broke away from England.
Key point. Key point. Key point. Never broke away from the Kingdom of England, because we know through the Treaty of Westminster of 1674, through Duke of York, known as King James II, King James VII of Scotland, he surrendered all this story about back to what we call the Kingdom of England, the Treaty of Westminster. It didn't say Great Britain, it said England. Let me just pull it up right quick. Treaty of 1674. See, this is what I prepare my bishops and my barristers who are coming into Clifford's Inn and being students of the King's Bench. This is what they're privy to. Read that first paragraph, Brother Burgess.
The Treaty of Westminster of 1674 was the peace treaty that ended the Third Anglo-Dutch War, signed by the Dutch Republic and the Kingdom of England. The treaty provided for the return of the colony of New Netherlands, now New York, to England, and renewed the Treaty of Breda of 1667.
Okay, not right there. So it said through the Third Anglo and Dutch War. Anglo is always in the picture. They ain't even talking about America. It said the Anglo and Dutch War, signed by the Dutch Republic, who was ruling here at this particular time under what we call the provinces, because you had the Anglo and you had the Anglo-Dutch War, which were 3 sets of war. and it said signed by the Republic in the Kingdom of England, and the treaty provided for the return of the colonies of New Netherland, now New York, to England. Now, what England they talk about? Now, the signatory to Charles II. This is England. It ain't Great Britain. This is England. And who signed it? Signatories to the Treaty of Westminster. Charles II of England. States, how the hell you going to sign this back over to England and you're supposed to be representing England? How is that? So as they say, you better honor your English ancestry. You better honor it, because treaties are nothing in lieu of charters. Charters set the standard. All right, let's get on with it. Where we at?
I think Brother Murphy has something to say.
Go ahead,
A point of
Bishop
interest.
Murphy.
Real quick. Because you will not claim your ancestry, a stranger will. Mm-hmm. And they're doing it through their fraternal organizations and to usurp your rights that are held and protected under the Magna Carta. Right here it says the third Anglo-Dutch War in 1674. So it was a republic fighting against a kingdom. The kingdom was fighting. So we already know republics are Romanistic forms of government. Okay, anything with republic is a Romanistic form of government. All right, I yield the floor.
Well said, Brother Bishop Murphy. Go ahead, Archbishop.
And point of interest, and that's what's taking place right now. They're trying to so-called bring back a republic, but the democracy itself is still part of a republic. We're trying to bring back the kingdom, because no matter what they try to do, it's the opposite of what it is that they should be doing. What they should be doing is reinstilling the kingdom, like prophecy said it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now
and we're restoring that, because we know that it's through the nation and the finances that we're going to use to uplift this nation that are already been etched in stone by our ancestral estate, who do the Species Resumption Act of January 14, 1875, they were supposed to restore the gold standard, and they did not do so. Why? Because through the implementation of the multiracial classes as established by Thomas Jefferson, who was the father of what we call the one-drop rule. What Walter Plecker did was create legislation to support the one-drop rule, which we're going to see in a second. But let's deal with the origin of the Treaty of, the Department of Treasury, which we know is the personnel or the person who's the tenured in lieu of their holding of that seat, who runs the Department of Treasury. But we're not concerned about the department itself. We want to know who runs the department and then what authority they get to run it. Let's go here. Go ahead and read, Brother Burkus.
The Department of the Treasury is the national treasury of the federal government, where it serves as
read a little bit louder, we can't hear you.
The Department of the Treasury is the national treasury of the federal government of the United States, where it serves as an executive department.
Stop right there. Now you notice, as Thomas Jefferson said, that the Constitution never allowed any national bank or corporation. So we know that if any type of corporation, i.e. agency, i.e. department needs to be created, it has to be created through an act of executive power, not legislative power, because the legislation, which derives authority by its Constitution, didn't allow for national banks, i.e. the executive department or the federal national treasury, to be created. So this is why I said it served as an executive department, because the legislative did not authorize it, as the founding fathers said. Go ahead.
The department oversees the Bureau of Engraving and Painting and the U.S. Mint. These two agencies are responsible for printing all money, currency, and coins, while the Treasury executes its circulation and demographic, domestic facial system.
That's fine. Now let's go down to the box. All right. Let's see, where is it at? Let's go here. So we know that you just read about the United States Department of Treasury. Now we're dealing with the United States Secretary of Treasury. All right. Read the first sentence in this paragraph.
The United States Secretary of the Treasury is the head of the United States Department of Treasury, which is concerned with all financial and monetary matters relating to the federal government, and until 2003, also including several major federal law enforcement agencies.
Perfect. Okay. As you can see, the incumbent, Janet Yellen. Now, this is the head of the United States Department of Treasury presently, and she's a member of the National Security Council. Who does she report to, Brother Burgess?
The President of the United States with Senate, advice, and consent.
Okay, so she reports to the President of the United States. The appointer, what does it say? The Senate advice, but it says that with the Senate advice and consent, i.e. the upper house. So that means the president can't do nothing outside of with consent of the Senate, and we know Senate is the Congress. Now, the term of length, what does it say, Brother Burgess?
Say it one more time, King.
What is the term of length of the Department of Treasury under the Secretary of Treasury?
Pleasure of the President.
Okay, now how come is at the pleasure of the president? You're dealing with the money of the nation for the people, but yet it's under the authority of the power of one man, the president. That's not right. So this man can take your money from you at any time. Why? Because anything he does is not backed by the state legislation. Why? Because it's created by the executive branch outside the authority of the legislative branch, which Thomas Jefferson said that it will be a monopoly against the Constitution, which did not allow national banks or corporations such as these agencies, departments, function as Department of the Treasury. Why? Because you don't see a legislation here, do you? You see a statute. It says Title 31 United States Code, Section 301. That's the United States Code in which legislation is interpreted by an act of Congress. But an act of Congress can be ruled invalid under judicial review in lieu of the determination of the reviewing the application of the statute, how the statute should be interpreted. So this makes a law arbitrary and capricious. It is not construed to the Constitution. Yeah, statute was created created and passed by Congress, but it was done unconstitutional, as it said with Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. Why? Because even though it was opposed by the Democratic Republican Party, the president still signed it. Who? George Washington. Go ahead, Bishop Murphy.
Point of interest. This is why you have such capricious and inconclusive state mandated statutes. That's why you can you have must mask up mandates and such in California and no mandates in Georgia, because no two states follow the Constitution set forth by the United States to the T. Each one has their own made up interpretation. So the laws in California differ from the laws in Georgia or Texas or Florida. If they were one and unified law and the same, then it would be governed under the one same body. So therefore, this shows you that what goes on in the shoulders and the head doesn't go on in the leg. The body is dysfunctional. Yeah. And this is why this is why the people suffer from these isms and schisms, because there is no uniformity to law.
Well said. And we know history and law is one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So the law without history is not good. You know what I'm saying? They're using a law that's not backed by history. And we know prior to this history of America, the history pertains to Anglo, but ain't no law pertaining to Anglo. Why? Because ain't no Anglo people. You know what I'm saying? So that's
They trying to run the state without the church.
Exactly.
Yes,
It's
sir.
not gonna work that way.
All right. So government of the United Kingdom. Let's get a quick view about that. Oh, we went through that already. All right. Let's go here now. Okay. All right. So we talked about the East and West Schism, and we know that at that particular time, William the Conqueror was ruling in 1054. And we know that there was a Norman conquest of Italy as well as a Norman conquest in England. And we know that the conquest of England results in the knowledge of the history of the kings and queens who ruled at that particular time. And when they established Clifford's Inn was a temple where all lawyers, barristers, or people of high intellect went to study, and it consists of 3 temples: the inner temple, the middle temple, and the outer temple. So when we're dealing with the foundation of the United States and its creation of its nation and establishing national debt for the new nation that's in debt, you have to deal with the actual parties that are involved. And as we noticed, George Thomas Jefferson okayed the passing of the charter to establish a national bank in North America, which is a violation. And George Washington appointed a guy by the name of Thomas Willing. And Thomas Willing was the president of the First National Bank. And look where this man went to study at. Read that for him, Brother Burgess. You there, Brother Burgess?
So excuse me, December 19th, 1731 to January 19th, 1821 was American merchant, a mayor of Philadelphia, and delegate of the Continental Congress from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the first president of the Bank of North America, and the first president of the First Bank of the United States.
Okay, now where did this man go to school at? Educated at?
In a temple.
In a temple. Now let's go back to Clifford's Inn. What it says right here. Noted student.
Noted students in the law at Clifford's Inn include Sir Edward Coates and John Sleaton, although generally considered to be an
Adjunct means connected.
Adjunct to the inner temple. The members of Clifford Inn always maintained that they were a separate entity.
Separate. Go ahead.
As a mark of that independence, the inner temple ventures began a tradition of sending Clifford Inn a message once a year, to which, of course, a reply was neither likely nor expected.
Okay, let's look at the end of the temple real quick. Read that.
Honorable Society of the Inner Temple, commonly known as the Inner Temple, is one of the four ends of court professionally association for barrister and judges in London to be called to the bar and practice as a barrister in England and Wales. A person must belong to one of these ends, and it is located in the wider temple area of the capital near Royal Court of Justice and within the city of London.
All right, that's cool. Now read the next one.
The Inn is a professional body that provides legal training, selection, and regulation for members. It is ruled by a governing council called Parliament, made up of the masters of the bench or benches, and led by the treasurer, who is elected to serve a one-year term. The temple takes its name from the Knight Templar, who originally until their, I pronounced that wrong?
No, originally, you're right.
Say again?
You're right.
Who originally until their
Abolition, yeah.
In 1312, leased the land to the Templars inhabitants, Templars.
That's cool. That's cool. So that's why we call the English Third Temple Church of England. Because we're representing the Knights of Templars, who kept this history sacred for us to raise knights to be able to exemplify the position as knights to protect our kingdom, our state. All right. So we're going to come to our closing. And our closing is going to be a result. It's going to show that as a result of the reclassification of the so-called English people through the one-drop rule, we have become multiracial classification outside of the classifications of races, i.e. ethnicity, that existed before we were invaded by Roman theology through their divines. All right, where is it at? One-drop rule. We know about the one-drop rule. Let's just go real quick. Read the first two paragraphs, Archbishop.
All right. One-drop rule. Before and during centuries of slavery, people had interracial relationships, most of which are most likely not consensual. Before the American Civil War, free people of mixed race, free people of color, were considered legally white if individuals had less than 1/8 or 1/4 African ancestry, depending on the state. Many mixed race people were absorbed into the majority culture based simply on appearance, associations, and carrying out community responsibilities. These and community acceptance were the more important factors if a person's racial status was questioned, not their documented ancestry. Because of the social mobility of antebellum society in frontier areas, many people did not have documentation about their ancestors anyway.
Stop right there. Now you see right here, it said antebellum conditions. This is dealing with the plantations. And it said partout sequitur ventrem, which is the status of the mother. Parens patria is governing now as a result of partout sequitur ventrem via the birth certificate, which is your estate that has been subject to the creation of the birth certificate by way of declaring your father dead to alienate him from his so-called right of domicile in England, which brought on condition as partout sequitur ventrem. So as we can see, and this was done based off the classifications of the English to these subjugation multiracial classifications done by this guy based off this next paragraph. Read this, Archbishop.
It says, based on late 20th century DNA analysis and a preponderance of historical evidence, U.S. President Thomas Jefferson is widely believed to have fathered the 6 mixed race children with his slave, Sally Hemings, who was herself 3/4 white, and a paternal half-sister of his wife, Martha Wales Jefferson.
Okay, so mixed races, key point.
All right, now.
With that said, go ahead, Bishop Murphy.
Point of interest, we just read a few moments ago that a lot of this, the intermingling of the races has taken place at this time due to slavery, or they inferred to unconsensual, by unconsensual means. But I beg to differ. For my studies have shown that it was love. A lot of these people were getting together out of love, out of resources, out of community, you know. So some of it, there was a lot of dysfunction and toil, but I'm talking about this. Look at the date, look at the time, you know, of year, what was going on in the society.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes.
Mhm.
Trying to preserve, coexist together. You know what I'm saying? Because like you said, what's his name? William Blake spoke about the industrial age, you know, and the industrial age is the time of from the early 1900s to the 1930s and 40s, when a lot of famine and death and disease was around as a result of the industrial age, and the children had to go out and work because, you know, most of the parents were either at war and stuff like that. So that brought on what we call, there's a term dealing with when the children worked at chimney sweepers. You know, most of our brothers worked in London as well as in New York City and other colonies, working on cleaning out chimneys, a way to make a life for the family, because most of the work that was done to provide for the family was done, as Archbishop said, through agrarian societies. You know, but the agrarian societies broke down, and we had to adopt. This is why many of our ancestors left the South and moved to the North, because of the creation of the Industrial Revolution. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In closing, this is multiracial. People of many races. Many terms exist for people with various multiracial backgrounds, including mixed races. But let's look at the classifications of the races. Regions with significant multiracial populations. Africa, East Africa, specific Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, portions of the East African community. People of mixed race are called half caste in English, or Kotora, singular in Swahili, Wachatora, plural in Swahili. Also North Africans. Those Africans, a large number of multiracial communities can be also found. Among these are Haratin, oasis dwellers of Sub-Saharan, of Saharan, southern Morocco, Algiers, Mauritania. These are believed to be mixtures of Sub-Saharan Africans and Berbers, and constitute a socially and ethnic distinct group. So most of the multiracial classifications of the so-called people as Negro, Black, Cousin, and Ethiopian, created through Thomas Jefferson as the father of the six races, resulted from the breakdown of the tribes here. Now we classify as Native Americans, who have a large history in North America, now called North America, prior to the East and West schisms of the invasions of the Normans in Italy, as well as England, because we know England is here. Now today in North America. So on that note, a beautiful lesson. I hope that the brothers and sisters who view the content that was brought forth in Clifford's Inn and Louisville King's Bench, as well as its bishops and its students, that it was clear, it was precise, without a doubt, informative. So I just want y'all to realize that it takes a wise man to admit that he's been wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We have took it upon ourselves to realize that, you know, in order for you to find your way, you must, and once you realize that your way has been lost, you don't keep going forward. Your job is to go backwards and find out where you stepped off track. And this is what we provide for you. So I love you all. I wish y'all back to the fealty of the English Third Temple Church, reformed from the English Church of England, as well as your authoritative figures known as Archbishop Belmont and Bishop Murphy, under the tutorship of your king, as well as the students, Brother Burgess and Brother Simpson, who will be surely become bishops in no time. So I leave all closing remarks to Archbishop and Bishop Murphy, and I also leave Brother Simpson and Brother Burgess to say a couple of words within the time frame that has been given.
So there you have it, brothers and sisters, coming from Clifford's Inn, our first meeting. As we continue to progress, we will become a lot sharper and more right and exact. This first meeting was more so to kind of give you an idea and understanding of where our authority comes, the history, and the people who are involved regarding us being able to stand today or be resurrected today. Technically, we were resurrected back June 15th, the day of the Magna Carta's anniversary.
Yes.
So we have been up and running for a little bit, but today was one of the first meetings on the official record, for the record. Now, as we've shown you, we have 12 lords who have to fill in these seats. And right now you have already 5 of them right now who's going to be coming right and exact as we continue to keep sharpening our swords. But we still have room for another, 7. So all we need you to do is continue to keep doing the great work, because as we're showing you, this isn't going anywhere. It's never left us. It's always actually been here.
Yes.
We've been gone. We've been unconscious, but now we're rising back to our higher self. We're no longer dealing with amnesia or aphasia. So with that being said, we love you. We know this is going to be hard for many because the law is hard. It's stone. And, many of you who live godless and lawless is just going to have a hard time putting yourself back into the position of righteousness. So with that being said, I'm gonna let the rest of the closing go to our brother Bishop Murphy from the House of Murphy. And, once again, heed our words, and those who are doing the great work, welcome home.
Well said.
Welcome home indeed. Peace and love, angels, Anglo-Saxon, Berbers, friends, beloved people. You've been introduced to Clifford's Inn. We enjoy our study. We study to show ourselves approved for our Father, for our sake and salvation of our posterity. We recognize all those who have provided a stepping stone, a building stone to come to this place of knowledge as we come in to fulfill our Father's will. We thank all of you for giving us your attention, because you know it is hard to pay attention in the world of distraction, which is even more truly costly. We know that you're not dealing in actual money, commerce, energy, gold, and silver, but fiat currency de facto, like the laws and the republics and the democracies with which you pledge your allegiance. So this is too for all of you who have eyes to see and ears to hear, that your father is calling you, your mother is calling you to honor your ancestral free name that is given to you, and that you would not throw it away, the baby with the bath towel. So we love you. We have no judgment nor held or to send you a condemnation. The correction is yours for you to recognize for your family's sake and posterity. So to all of those at the sound of my voice, I love you. And traverse in all you're getting, in all you're gathering, gather overstanding of your ancestral heritage and your estate. Peace and love, Murphy House.
Well said. Brother Simpson.
Peace and love, angels, English men and women at the sound of my voice. This is another great lesson, an astounding lesson. The first day of Clifford's Inn, and already 8 days into the fire, right? Thank you. I want to give high honors and blessings to Archbishop, and as well as Bishop Murphy, and as well as the King, of course, for bringing this lesson to us, so that way we can all sit and dine as the first day in Clifford's Inn, eat together and break bread together. Either which way you slice it, either which way you cut it,
the root still goes back to England. So take heed to our words. Peace and love from the House of Simpson.
Brother Burgess.
Blessings, Anglos of all status. Mr. House of Virgin.
Speak a little louder, Brother Burgess.
Blessings, Mr. House of Virgin. And today's lesson was a real eye opener. I mean, I hope all y'all come back to the church who comprehends this and ready to put some work in with us. I'm very humble, and I appreciate my brothers for revealing all of this to me. I say it every week. I must continue to say it. I must act accordingly. Signing off.
Well said. Well said. So I, as your king, we honor y'all, we love y'all, and we desire y'all back to our Father's divine will. And with that, the time is now 4:57 of August 8, 2021, and we will close out on this meeting as we convene for the next one. Remember, do your due diligence and show yourself approved, because in my Father's house there's many rooms. And with that, I'll say peace.
Peace.